The request came to him late in the night when the lights of the space station were dim, and most workers had already gone back to their bunks. He was sitting at his small desk, tools scattered everywhere, a tired cup of cold coffee in his hand when the signal flashed red on his console. It was marked with the seal of the Galactic Empire, and the message said only one thing: urgent repair request, proceed immediately. Location will be given on arrival. The human mechanic rubbed his eyes, thinking it must be another broken tool. Maybe some high officer dropped his personal scanner, or maybe a shuttle engine needed quick fixing. It was normal for the Empire to treat humans like workers, calling them at odd hours and expecting them to work without question. He sighed, grabbed his worn jacket, and packed his kit of tools. As he walked through the silent halls of the station, he felt something strange about this call. The air seemed heavier, and the guards stationed near the shuttle port were more serious than usual. They did not joke or laugh. They only checked his ID and let him through with cold stares. That made his heart beat faster. He had been working for the Empire for years, but rarely had he seen this kind of tension. When his shuttle launched, he leaned back and stared out into the stars. The request gave no details, no machine name, no broken system. Only urgent repair. That was odd. He had repaired everything from weapons to simple kitchen robots. But at least they always told him what he was fixing. He frowned and told himself not to think too much. Work was work, and thinking too much about Empire orders was dangerous. The shuttle guided him to a hidden sector, one he had never been to before. The docking bay was large and dark, guarded by soldiers in heavy armor. Their faces were hidden behind masks, and their weapons glowed faintly in the shadows as he stepped off the shuttle. He heard a faint sound, metallic and heavy. Like chains being dragged across the floor, he turned his head. But the soldiers pushed him forward without a word. The hall smelled of oil and smoke. The lights flickered as if the place had been abandoned for years. He followed the guards deeper inside until they stopped at a giant locked door. One of them scanned a card, and the heavy barrier opened with a loud groan. A blast of cold air hit his face, carrying with it a sound that froze his steps. It was not the sound of a machine. It was breathing slow, deep, and alive. His hands tightened on the tool bag. He told himself it must be some large engine cooling down. But his gut told him otherwise. Inside the hangar, shadows stretched across the walls. A faint glow of red lit the far side, and then he saw it. At first, he thought it was just a giant machine covered with cables. But when its eyes opened, golden and burning, he staggered back. It was not a tool, not a machine. It was a creature bound in thick chains of steel. The shape was massive, wings folded tight against its body, scales dark and shimmering under the flickering light. The creature shifted slightly, and the ground shook under its weight. Its tail dragged against the floor, rattling the chains. The human's heart pounded. He had never seen anything like it, not even in the stories whispered in old mining colonies. The soldiers barked orders at him, telling him to move closer. They called it the weapon. They told him not to speak, not to hesitate, and not to question. His legs carried him forward, even though his mind screamed to run. He looked into the creature's eyes, expecting rage or hunger. Instead, he saw something else. Sorrow, deep and endless sorrow. The sound of chains grew louder as the creature turned its head toward him. Its breath came out hot, fogging the cold air. His tools rattled in his bag as his hands shook. He wanted to ask, "What am I here to fix?" but his throat felt dry. The Empire called it a weapon, but standing there, he could feel intelligence in its gaze. The dragon, for that was the only name that came to his mind, was alive, and it was suffering. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The soldiers behind him grew impatient. Shouting at him to get to work, he bent down slowly, pretending to check the chains and the machines around them. But his mind was racing. This was no ordinary request. This was no broken tool. The Empire had lied to him, and now he was standing face to face with a chained alien dragon. The night had started like any other, with a simple call for repair. But now his life had changed. He knew the Empire wanted him to fix something far more dangerous than a machine, and he could feel it in his bones. Whatever choice he made here would decide his fate, and maybe even the fate of the galaxy. He stepped closer, his heart thumping so loud that he feared the guards could hear it. The chains around the creature rattled as it shifted, metal grinding against the floor. It was massive, far larger than any ship engine he had ever repaired. Its body filled the hangar like a mountain of living scales, and its eyes glowing golden followed his every move. The human mechanic swallowed hard. His orders were to check the restraints, to make sure the locks would not fail. The guards had barked those commands in cold voices, warning him that any mistake could mean his life. Yet when he looked at the creature, he did not see a weapon. He saw pain. He saw hunger. He saw a silent plea. One guard jabbed him in the back with the butt of a rifle. "Move faster," the soldier growled. He knelt down near the thick chains, pretending to examine the bolts. His hands touched the metal. It was hot, almost burning. The creature's breath rolled over him in waves, each exhale carrying heat and the smell of smoke. He felt sweat bead on his forehead even though the hanger was cold. He risked a glance upward and his eyes locked with the dragon's. For a second, time stopped. He thought he heard something, not a sound through his ears, but a whisper inside his mind. It was faint, broken, but clear enough. Help. His breath caught. He almost dropped his wrench. He looked around quickly, but the guards were too busy standing at attention to notice his sudden panic. Could it speak to him? Was this real? He stared harder. The dragon's gaze did not waver. Its eyes were not wild like an animal's. They were deep, filled with thought, filled with memory. The whisper came again, this time stronger. "Human. Help." His heart raced. He wanted to answer, but his mouth stayed shut. If the guards noticed, he would be dead before a word left his lips. He bent lower, hiding his face from their view. His mind screamed in confusion. Machines he could fix, tools he could repair. But a chained alien dragon begging for freedom. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. One of the guards stepped closer. "Check the neck clamps," he ordered. His voice was sharp, demanding. The human obeyed, walking slowly toward the massive head. The chains around the dragon's neck were thick, biting into its scales. Dark marks showed where the metal had dug deep into flesh. He touched the clamp with his gloved hand, and again the whisper filled his head. "Pain!" He flinched. He felt the dragon's suffering as if it were his own. His chest tightened, his throat burned. He blinked rapidly to keep tears from showing. He quickly bent down, pretending to tighten the bolts with his wrench. The guards watched with cold eyes, satisfied. The dragon lowered its head slightly, just enough to bring its golden eyes level with his. He saw something there that the guards did not. Not fear, not rage, but trust. It was small, fragile, like a spark in the dark, but it was real. And it shook him more than any chain. The hanger echoed with the sound of the chains as the dragon moved again. The guards shifted nervously, their rifles ready. One of them sneered at the mechanic. "Don't get too close. Human, this thing is not alive. It's a tool, a weapon. Nothing more." The human bit back his words, but inside his mind the voice whispered again. "Not weapon, not tool, I am alive." His stomach turned. He realized the Empire had lied to everyone, to them. This dragon was only a machine made of flesh, but the truth burned bright in those eyes. This was no tool. This was a living being, intelligent and chained. He finished checking the clamps, or at least pretended to, and stepped back slowly. His hands trembled as he placed the wrench back into his bag. He could still feel the dragon's thoughts pressing into his mind. Not words exactly, but feelings. Sadness, anger, and a plea for freedom. As he turned to leave, the guards blocked his way. "You'll be staying here tonight," one of them said. "Orders are that you remain until further notice. We may need more repairs." His stomach dropped. He had hoped to escape back to his small bunk, to think, to breathe. But now he would be trapped here inside the hangar, under the watchful eyes of both guards and dragon. He nodded silently, not daring to argue. They gave him a small cot in the corner. The air was heavy, filled with smoke and the sound of chains grinding every time the dragon shifted. He lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. His mind replayed the voice again and again. Human. Help. He thought of the Empire's cruelty, of how they treated humans like tools, and now he saw the same cruelty mirrored in how they treated this dragon, chained and broken. He clenched his fists. He did not know how. He did not know when. But he felt a seed of resolve growing inside him. If this creature could still trust even in chains, then maybe he could find the courage to do something no one else would dare. The night stretched on, filled with the sound of rattling chains, glowing eyes, and a whisper that would not leave his mind. The mechanic realized the Empire had dragged him into something far darker than a simple repair. He was no longer fixing a tool. He was standing at the edge of a choice that could change everything. The human mechanic could not sleep that night. The sound of chains echoed again and again in the hangar. every clink of metal pulling at his nerves. Every time the dragon shifted, the floor rumbled slightly. And every time its eyes glowed in the dark, he felt the same whisper touch his mind. Help. Human. He lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he had stepped into. It was supposed to be a tool repair, something simple in and out, but this was not a machine. This was a creature of flesh and blood, chained and tortured, a dragon, alive, intelligent, and full of sorrow. By morning, the guards brought him a plate of cold rations. They barked orders and told him to get back to work. His hand shook slightly as he picked up his tools, but his mind was already decided. He had to know more. The Empire never told him the truth, but maybe he could find it himself. He pretended to work on the chains, tapping bolts and making notes on a small pad, but all the while he listened to the whispers in his mind. They were faint, broken, but the meaning was clear. The dragon was trying to talk, not in words humans spoke, but in thoughts, in feelings, in images. When he touched one of the clamps, his vision blurred for a moment. He saw something that was not the hangar, not the chains, but a sky filled with stars. He saw mountains rising like jagged teeth, and creatures like this dragon flying freely through clouds of fire. The vision was bright, alive, and then it broke apart into darkness. His hand jerked away from the metal, his heart pounding. The guards looked at him suspiciously, but he quickly bent back to his work, pretending nothing had happened. Inside, though, his mind was burning. He had seen the truth. The dragon had not always been chained. It had lived free, it had ruled the skies. It was not a weapon, it was a guardian that night. When the guards dozed at their posts, he dared to whisper back. His voice was low, almost shaking. Why are you here? Why did they chain you? The dragon's eyes opened slowly, and though its mouth never moved, the words pressed into his mind like thunder. Betrayed. Empire. The human shivered. The dragon showed him more flashes. He saw soldiers in dark armor. He saw flames. He saw chains being thrown over wings too large to fold. He saw an army cheering as the dragon fell. Its kind, once many, were captured, broken, some killed, some forced into slavery. And now this one remained, kept alive not for mercy, but for war. He sat frozen, his body tense. The Empire wanted to turn this creature into a living weapon, a machine made of flesh, a tool to destroy entire worlds. He clenched his fists. The Empire's cruelty knew no end. They enslaved humans in small ways, keeping them as workers and servants, but this was something darker. They had stolen freedom from a being older and stronger than themselves. The dragon's voice was quieter now, heavy with pain. They used chains, machines, commands, but I am not tool, I am not theirs. The human felt his chest tighten. He could see the marks where the metal had dug into the dragon's scales. He could feel the weight of centuries in its voice. He whispered back, Why me? Why talk to me? For a moment there was silence. Then the dragon's golden eyes glowed brighter. Because you. Listen, those words struck deep. No one listened to humans in the Empire. Humans were seen as lesser, used and forgotten. Yet here was a creature of legend, chained and broken, telling him that his voice mattered, telling him that his choice mattered. The following days, he kept pretending to repair the chains, tightening bolts, checking locks, but secretly, he learned more. Each night the dragon showed him pieces of the truth, images of its people, stories of its betrayal. The Empire had lied to everyone, to the galaxy. They said these dragons were dangerous, mindless beasts. But the truth was clear. They had been protectors. They had guarded stars, kept balance, and defended smaller races from war, until the Empire feared them. The mechanic felt anger burning inside him. The Empire feared what they could not control, so they chained it, turned it into a weapon, and erased the truth. He wanted to scream, but he held it inside. He knew the guards would kill him if they saw even a hint of rebellion. One evening, when he was left alone near the chains, the dragon lowered its head close. Its breath washed over him, hot and heavy. Human, it whispered. Will you help? His heart pounded. He looked at its eyes, bright with both pain and hope. He wanted to say yes, but fear locked his tongue. If he tried, he would be hunted, tortured, killed. He thought of his small life, his lonely bunk, his years of silence. He thought of how no one had ever believed a human could make a difference. But when he looked again at the dragon, when he saw the deep wounds carved into its flesh, when he heard the faint whisper of freedom in his mind, he knew the truth. If he stayed silent, the Empire would win. The dragon would be broken, and with it perhaps the galaxy itself. he whispered back, his voice trembling. "I don't know how, but I will try." The dragon's eyes burned brighter, and for the first time the chains rattled not with pain, but with the sound of hope. The human mechanic woke the next morning with a heavy heart. His body was tired, but his mind refused to rest. All night he had heard the dragon's whispers echoing inside his head, repeating the same words again and again. "Will you help?" Those words clung to him like chains. He had promised he would try, but now in the cold light of day, fear pressed against his chest. The guards ordered him back to work. They pushed him toward the dragon, forcing him to inspect the chains once more. His hands moved automatically, checking locks and bolts, but his mind was far away. The dragon's golden eyes followed every motion. Quiet but full of expectation, the mechanic felt the weight of that trust. Fragile and dangerous, he tried to hide his emotions. He pretended to be calm as he tapped the chains with his tools, but inside he was trembling. How could he possibly help? He was only a human, only a worker. He had no power, no weapons, no allies. The Empire ruled everything with iron fists, yet the dragon still believed in him. That belief scared him more than the guards' rifles ever could. That night, when the guards were distracted, he sat near the dragon's head. His voice was low, careful. "I don't know what to do. They are watching me all the time." The dragon's breath rolled over him like fire, its voice whispering in his mind, "Not chains. Wounds, heal wounds first." The mechanic looked closely and saw it. The dragon's scales near the neck clamps were raw. Bleeding in places, the heavy chains had cut deep. He reached into his tool bag and pulled out cloth and small bottles he used to clean grease from engines. Slowly, he pressed the cloth against the wounded scales. The dragon shivered but did not move. For the first time, he was not pretending to fix chains. He was helping. The dragon let out a low sound, not anger but relief, like a sigh that had been held for centuries. The human whispered, "I can't take the chains off yet, but maybe I can make the pain less." The dragon's mind touched his again. Soft but strong. "You care." The words pierced him. No one had ever said that before, not in his life, to the Empire. He was a tool, a worker, nothing more. But to this chained creature, he was something different. He felt his throat tighten. He kept cleaning the wounds, carefully wrapping pieces of cloth around the bleeding spots. The guards noticed his long work but did not stop him. They thought he was strengthening the restraints, checking weak points. They didn't care as long as the chains remained unbroken. That gave him time. Every day he returned, and every day he cleaned, wrapped, and whispered to the dragon. Slowly the bond between them grew. One evening, while adjusting a chain on the dragon's wing, the mechanic slipped on the metal floor. He fell hard, his tool bag scattering across the ground. A sharp piece of broken chain almost pierced his side. In that moment, the dragon moved faster than anyone expected. Its wings shifted just enough to block the falling shard. Shielding him, the guards rushed forward, weapons raised, shouting at the dragon to stay still. But the human stood quickly. Shouting back that it was his fault, he waved his hands, pretending nothing serious had happened. The guards cursed but lowered their weapons. Still glaring, the mechanic looked at the dragon, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. It had protected him. That night, as the guards finally rested, he sat close again. His whisper was soft. "You saved me." The dragon's golden eyes glowed warmer. Its voice in his mind was steady. "Trust goes both ways." The mechanic felt something shift inside him. The fear that had weighed on him began to change, turning into courage. He realized he was no longer just a worker following orders. He was part of something greater. He was the only one who could hear the dragon's voice. The only one who could act. Over the next days, he risked more. He pretended to tighten bolts but actually loosened a few. Just slightly. Not enough for the guards to notice. He tested how much pressure the locks could take. He memorized guard schedules, noting who slept on duty, who left early for meals, all while keeping his hands busy and his head bowed like a loyal worker. The dragon never rushed him. Its whispers were patient, calm, slow, human, slow. Chains heavy, but heart stronger. Those words gave him strength. He began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Still, danger hung in the air. The guards grew suspicious of his long hours. One of them stopped him one morning, pressing the barrel of a rifle against his back. "You're not doing more than ordered, are you?" The mechanic forced himself to laugh nervously. Shaking his head, he muttered about weak bolts. About safety checks, the soldier grunted and walked away. But his eyes lingered with doubt. The mechanic's hands shook as he returned to the dragon, but the creature whispered, "Fear means you still care." That simple phrase calmed him. Every night, as the station lights dimmed and the silence grew, he sat closer to the dragon. He told it small things, stories of the colony where he was born, the cold bunk rooms where he slept, the meals of stale bread he had endured, and the dragon listened. Its golden eyes never leaving his face in return. It showed him visions of skies filled with fire, of vast mountains and crystal lakes, of a world lost to chains through those nights. The bond became real, fragile but strong, forged in pain and trust. The mechanic knew the risk was great, but he also knew the Empire had made one mistake. They had forced a human and a dragon together, and in that bond lay the first crack in their chains. The days passed slowly, but each one felt heavier than the last. The human mechanic could sense a storm building inside the Empire's plans. The guards spoke in whispers, their voices filled with urgency. They said the commanders wanted the dragon ready. They said the time for waiting was over. The mechanic's heart sank. He knew what that meant. The Empire was preparing to use the dragon as a weapon. One morning he was pulled from his cot by two soldiers. They dragged him into the hangar and threw a datapad at him. On the screen were orders, short and cold. Final inspection, chains reinforced. Prepare for deployment. His hands trembled as he read. He looked up at the dragon, and for the first time, he saw fear in its golden eyes. The guards barked at him to move faster. They wanted the dragon locked tighter than ever. They wanted every bolt sealed, every clasp closed. He bent over his tools, pretending to work, but his thoughts were racing. If the Empire sent the dragon to war, it would be forced to kill thousands, maybe millions, and once it was used as a weapon, there would be no escape. The Empire would never allow it to live free. The dragon's whisper came to him stronger that day, filled with urgency. Human time ends, if not now, never. He swallowed hard. His chest felt tight. He had been preparing, loosening bolts, studying guard routines, but he had not been ready to act, not yet. Now the Empire was forcing his hand. That night he sat by the dragon's side. The guards were still awake, but he whispered softly, his lips barely moving, "They're going to use you tomorrow. I don't know how much time we have." The dragon's eyes glowed brighter. "Then tomorrow, we must break." He shook his head, fear pressing down on him like a weight. "If they catch us, we die." The dragon's voice was calm, steady. "Better to die free than live in chains." The human closed his eyes. He knew those words were true, but the truth scared him more than the lies. The next day the hangar was filled with noise. Soldiers marched in, engineers checked systems, and officers barked orders. The mechanic moved quietly, pretending to tighten bolts, but secretly, he made the final changes. One lock he had loosened days ago. Another he carefully jammed so it would not close fully. Sweat dripped down his back as he worked, every second feeling like a knife against his skin. The commander entered, tall and cold. His voice echoed in the hangar. "This weapon will be unleashed tomorrow. Any failure will be punished with death." His eyes swept across the guards, then landed on the mechanic. "Especially you, human, do your job, or you will not live to see another sunrise." The mechanic bowed his head, muttering a respectful answer. But inside anger burned. He looked at the dragon, chained and silent, and made his choice. He could not wait any longer. The breaking point had come. That night, the air in the hangar was tense. The soldiers were restless, polishing their rifles, preparing for transport. The mechanic sat on his cot, pretending to rest, but his eyes kept drifting toward the dragon. He could feel the creature's heartbeat in his mind, steady and strong, waiting for his signal. At midnight, when the guards shifted their posts, he moved. His hands shook as he pulled a small tool from his bag. He crawled to the base of the nearest chain. His breath came fast, loud in his ears. The dragon lowered its head slightly, shielding him from view. He twisted the tool into the lock he had loosened days ago. It clicked open with a soft snap. His heart leapt. He quickly moved to the next one, his fingers trembling so much he almost dropped the tool. Behind him, one of the guards coughed in his sleep. He froze, sweat pouring down his face, then silence. He worked faster. The second lock gave way, then the third. Each chain loosened, added weight to his chest, because he knew, once the guards noticed, there would be no turning back. The dragon's whisper filled his mind. Steady and calm, courage human. "The chains are weak, you are strong," he nodded. Wiping sweat from his brow, he had never felt strong. Never felt brave, but in this moment, with the dragon's golden eyes on him, he believed by dawn he had finished. The chains still looked tight, but inside they were fragile. One command away from breaking. The dragon tested them slightly, the sound hidden beneath the noise of engines. They would hold just long enough to fool the guards. The commander entered again, his eyes sharp. He ordered the soldiers to prepare transport. The mechanic stood nearby, heart pounding, waiting. He knew this was it. This was the moment everything would change. The dragon's eyes met his, glowing like fire in the dark. For the first time, the mechanic did not feel fear. He felt purpose. The Empire thought they had built a weapon, but what they had truly done was create a bond stronger than steel. As the soldiers lined up, ready to move, the dragon's whisper thundered in his head, "Now." And in that single word, he felt both terror and freedom collide. The breaking point had come, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hangar was filled with tension. Soldiers marched back and forth, preparing for the final transport. Engines roared in the distance, lights flashed across the walls. The human mechanic stood near the dragon, his heart racing so hard it felt like it would burst from his chest. He had spent days loosening chains, pretending to repair, hiding his true plan. Now the moment had come. The commander gave orders, his voice echoing, "Move the weapon. We leave in 1 hour." The guards shouted back, dragging crates of equipment, checking weapons, tightening their ranks. None of them suspected that the chains binding the dragon were no longer unbreakable. None of them noticed the mechanic's trembling hands as he clutched his tool bag. The dragon's golden eyes glowed brighter than ever. Its voice whispered in his mind, steady and calm, "Now, human, now we break free." The mechanic swallowed hard, sweat ran down his back. He knew if even one guard saw what he was about to do, both of them would die. But he also knew there was no turning back. He crouched near the first chain. Pretending to adjust it, his hands moved quickly, pressing the hidden release he had prepared. The lock gave way with a faint click. The dragon shivered, the sound of metal loosening echoing faintly. One guard turned his head, suspicion in his eyes. The mechanic coughed loudly, banging his wrench against the floor to cover the sound. The guard cursed at him and looked away. The second lock came free, then the third. His heart pounded with every click. He felt the dragon's strength building, its massive body shifting slightly, testing its new freedom. He whispered under his breath, "Not yet. Wait for my signal." The commander walked closer. His sharp eyes scanning the room, the mechanic quickly stood, pretending to wipe sweat from his forehead. The commander sneered, "Pathetic human, be useful for once, or I'll have you replaced." The mechanic bowed his head, hiding the fire of anger burning inside. When the commander turned away, the mechanic gave the signal. He dropped his wrench to the floor. The clattering sound rang through the hangar, and at that moment the dragon roared. The sound was thunder itself. Shaking the walls, soldiers froze, fear flashing in their eyes. The chains, weakened and loosened, snapped apart like brittle twigs. The dragon surged forward, its wings unfolding for the first time in years. Dust and smoke blasted through the hangar as the creature spread its vast wings. Soldiers shouted, rifles firing, energy blasts lit the air, striking scales but bouncing off like sparks against stone. The mechanic ducked, covering his head as explosions thundered around him. The dragon swung its massive tail, knocking soldiers aside like toys. The ground shook as its claws tore through the floor. Alarms blared across the station, red lights flashing. The commander screamed orders, "Kill the human! Kill the beast!" But his voice was drowned out by the chaos. The mechanic scrambled to his feet. Running to the dragon's side, a soldier aimed at him. But before the shot could fire, the dragon's claw came down, crushing the weapon and sending the soldier flying. The human looked up, his eyes meeting the golden gaze, and the dragon lowered its head. Its voice thundered in his mind, "Climb, human." He hesitated only a second before grabbing onto the thick scales, pulling himself onto its back. The heat of the dragon's body burned against him, but he held on tight. The dragon beat its wings once, twice, and then with a deafening roar it launched upward. Smashing through the hangar roof, metal screamed as the roof split apart. The sky above opened wide, stars shining like jewels. For the first time in decades, the dragon was free. It roared into the heavens, its wings cutting through the void. Soldiers below fired wildly. but their shots faded into the distance as the creature soared higher and higher. The mechanic clung tightly, the wind tearing at him, his eyes watered, his chest filled with awe. He had never flown, never dreamed of such speed. The stars blurred around him, and the dragon's voice filled his mind, strong and proud. Free, at last, but the danger was not over. Behind them, Empire ships roared to life. Sleek fighters rose from the docking bays, their engines glowing bright. The commander's voice echoed through comms, carried by loudspeakers. Do not let them escape. Bring the beast down. Lasers cut through the sky, chasing them. The dragon twisted and dove, its body moving with a grace no machine could match. The mechanic held on, his stomach lurching with every turn. Every shot that missed sent sparks across the stars. Every second felt like the edge between life and death. The dragon roared again, a sound that seemed to shake the very void. Flames burst from its throat, a river of fire sweeping across the sky. Fighters exploded in showers of light, debris raining into the blackness. The mechanic could only stare in shock. The Empire had tried to chain a storm, and now that storm was unleashed. Still more ships came. The dragon's wings burned with exhaustion, wounds reopened, blood shining dark against its scales. The mechanic pressed his hands against the injuries, whispering desperately, "Hold on, just a little longer. We can make it." The dragon's voice was softer now. "With you, I can." Through fire and metal, they broke past the last line of ships. The endless stars stretched before them. Wide and open, the dragon spread its wings wide, roaring into the void for the first time. The mechanic felt not like a tool, not like a worker, but like someone who had changed fate. They had escaped, they were free, but behind them, the Empire's fury was only beginning. The chase had started, and the galaxy would soon learn what it meant when a human and a dragon stood together. The stars stretched wide before them, endless and silent. The human mechanic clung to the dragon's back, his heart pounding with fear and wonder. The Empire's ships had fallen behind, but their lights still blinked in the distance, hunting, chasing, refusing to give up. He could still hear alarms in his head, still feel the echo of chains breaking, still taste the smoke of battle in his mouth. The dragon's wings beat strong, each movement shaking the void. Its breath came heavy, fire still glowing faintly at the edges of its mouth. It had been chained for years, its strength stolen, but now, in the open sky of space, its power was returning. Its golden eyes burned with freedom. Its voice whispered in the mechanic's mind, "We are free, human. Free at last." The mechanic pressed his cheek against the warm scales. His hands shook as he held on. He whispered, almost in disbelief, "We did it. We actually did it." For the first time in his life, he felt something bigger than fear. Bigger than survival, he felt purpose. He was no longer just a worker, no longer just a forgotten man in the Empire's endless machine. He was part of something greater. Behind them, the Empire's voice roared through comm channels. "Carried across the stars, the beast has escaped. Find them, bring them back, or burn them both alive." The mechanic's stomach tightened. He knew the chase would never stop. The Empire did not forgive, the Empire did not forget. But as he looked into the endless sky, he knew they had already won something more precious than victory. They had won freedom. The dragon flew on, its body cutting through the void like fire through the night. Each wing beat carried them farther from the chains, farther from the hangar, farther from the life that had trapped them both. The mechanic closed his eyes and felt the rush of wind, the pull of the stars for the first time. He understood what it meant to fly. Hours passed, silence wrapping around them. Only the hum of distant stars and the beating of wings filled the air. The mechanic's thoughts drifted. He remembered the first night he saw the dragon, bound and bleeding. He remembered the whispers of pain. The eyes filled with sorrow, now, those same eyes glowed with strength, with trust, with a bond that nothing could break. The dragon's voice filled his mind again, softer this time. "You risked everything, why?" The mechanic swallowed hard. His voice shook as he answered, "Because you weren't a weapon. You weren't a tool, you were alive, and no one deserves chains." The dragon was silent for a moment, then its thoughts wrapped around his heart like fire and warmth. "You freed me, now I will protect you always." The mechanic felt tears sting his eyes. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed. But the dragon's voice was calm, almost amused. "Tears are not weakness. They are truth." He laughed softly, holding on tighter. In that moment, he realized something he had never believed before. He was not alone. Far behind, more ships appeared. their lights glowing like sharp teeth against the darkness. The Empire was still chasing, still determined to reclaim what it thought belonged to it. The mechanic's hands clenched. His voice was steady now. They'll never stop. Will they? The dragon's reply was fierce. Let them chase, let them fear, for I am not theirs anymore. And you are not theirs either. The dragon turned sharply, flames spilling from its mouth. A wave of fire cut through the void, forcing the enemy ships to scatter. Explosions lit the dark sky, brief sparks swallowed by the stars. The mechanic held tight, his body shaking but his spirit rising. He was not afraid anymore, not truly. He knew that together, they were more powerful than the Empire ever imagined. As the last enemy ship faded into the distance, the dragon soared higher, leaving trails of burning light in its wake. The mechanic closed his eyes, breathing deeply. For the first time he felt peace. The stars no longer seemed cold. The galaxy no longer seemed empty. He was free and he was not alone. The dragon's whisper returned. Steady and sure, the galaxy will hunt us, but it will also remember us. A human and a dragon bound not by chains, but by trust, the mechanic smiled. Then let them remember. Let them know we're not afraid. They flew into the deep void. Past glowing nebulae and broken moons, every place they passed seemed brighter, as if the stars themselves rejoiced at the breaking of chains. The mechanic thought of the people still trapped under the Empire's rule, humans and others alike for the first time. He wondered if maybe, just maybe, their flight could be more than escape. It could be the beginning of change. The dragon must have felt his thoughts, for it whispered gently, "This is not the end, human. This is the beginning. Together, we will show them that chains can break. Together, we will remind the stars of freedom." The mechanic pressed his hand against the warm scales. His heart steady now, his fear gone, he whispered back, "Together." And so they flew, man and dragon, into the vast unknown, leaving behind the chains, the guards. The cruelty of the Empire. Ahead of them lay danger, struggle and endless pursuit, but also hope, a hope stronger than any chain. The galaxy had no idea what this alliance meant, but soon every star, every world, every empire would learn. A single human and a single dragon had escaped, and in their bond was a fire that could set the universe alight.